Thank you everyone for joining us for this beginner Excel class. My name is Rachel Vingsness. I'm the Director of Career Development at the BRAC Career Center at Natick Service Council. I am so excited to have Sarah Calcutt with us this evening, and she will be taking us through beginner Excel. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Sarah. Sarah.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you all of you for being here and watching this. I'm here to talk to you all about Excel and hopefully demystify it. I think there's a lot of fear around Excel. It can seem very intimidating to people. I know I felt that way too, but there's a lot of small tricks we can teach you here today that will make it just feel a little bit less intimidating. So the next time you have to go into a spreadsheet, it won't be scary. So we're going to start right from the beginning. So if you are more familiar with what Excel is used for, you might have to skip ahead a little bit here, but we are going to start right from the beginning. So even if you have no idea what Excel is used for, this is where you're going to be. So in terms of what Excel is used for, really Excel is a way to organize data, whatever that data might be. So, you have a whole bunch of numbers or a whole bunch of survey results or anything like that. And Excel just allows you to put it into very neat rows and columns to keep everything organized. That's really what Excel is all about, is just keeping things organized so that they're easier for you to use to do all sorts of cool stuff. Some actual things that you might use Excel for. One is survey results. I know one of the things that I do in my actual job is I run surveys all the time for all different sorts of things. And when you get all those answers back, you can run the numbers and make all those cool infographics that you'd see. Something else that you might do is if you're hosting a party or an event, you might be collecting RSVPs from people. Excel's a great way to track that sort of thing because you can have everyone's name and maybe their contact information and information about what they, like to eat or anything like that. You can have that all in a spreadsheet. In a classroom setting, you can track things like attendance or grades. Often teachers will use some sort of spreadsheet to track grades or attendance, just to track over certain dates. Other things that you can do, Excel is also super popular to use for budgeting and accounting. So if you're trying to track your expenses, or track your budget and see how you're doing, you can use Excel to make that easier. And finally, if you're working with a large project, Excel can allow you to track different tasks. So you might have a whole ton of different tasks that need to be done, and maybe they're all assigned to different people. You can have a status for them and what needs to be done. All of that could be tracked in Excel. And as you can see here on my little slide, you can actually pull all that information into graphs and charts to make it easier to digest. So really, any data, numbers, or words that need to be organized, you can put into Excel. Like I said, graphs and charts, whenever you see a graph or a chart, it's probably pulling from Excel. We'll show you a really quick and easy way to create graphs and charts in the class today at the very end. So hold on for that. But if you see them, they are probably pulling from some sort of spreadsheet. Now, as we're going through this, I do want to point out that there are two different spreadsheet tools that we'll talk about today. There's Microsoft Excel, which is the one that we talk about that's really widely known. Google also has a version called Google Sheets. So I do want to point out that that's also a version you may be using. I will show both and I'll show you the differences between them as we go, but I do want you to be aware of that and think about, okay, which one am I using here? Because there are some slight differences, although they pretty much do the same thing. So with that, we are going to jump in and actually view this stuff live. I have some sample spreadsheets here that I'm going to use to demonstrate this, but you can go ahead and open a blank spreadsheet if you'd like, or you can get in touch with the BRAC Career Center to get a copy of our demo spreadsheet. So I'm going to pull up my spreadsheet here. This is Microsoft Excel that you're looking at right now, just to show you quite how similar it looks. This that I'm pulling over here is Google Sheets. So they're really quite similar. I'm going to go through them and I will switch back and forth where there are differences, just so that you're aware of them. So we'll start with Microsoft Excel so that I can give you a feel for what Excel might look like. I'm using the desktop version of Excel, which means it's on my computer. I can click a button right on there and launch Excel. All in here, this is your actual spreadsheet itself. You'll notice that there's rows and columns. So these are columns, the vertical ones, and then you have your horizontal rows here with all sorts of information. All of these are typable, so you can actually go into them. Up at the top here, you'll notice we have this giant toolbar. This is something that you'll see depending on which button you're pressing here. So right now we're on home, but there's insert and draw and page layout, all of these different tabs that we're in. That will change what shows up in this toolbar. So just so you can see what this looks like, if I were to go into data, you'll notice that all the buttons change. So you can toggle between them. And if you're not sure where something is, I'm going to pull this down a little bit so that you can see. If you're not sure where something is, this search button up here allows you to look for it. So for instance, there's a field called text to columns. This is kind of a call out for our advanced class, but if I decided I wanted to, I could say text to, whoops, I have to type it correctly, text to columns, and you can see that we've got a couple different options here. Other options, one of the ones I use a lot is remove duplicate. So I'm starting to type that in and you'll notice it actually has it. It suggests it right here rather than me having to find it in the toolbars. So that's an option for you if you're having trouble finding a button. For now, if you're following along with me, and I highly recommend you do that, there will be opportunities for you to practice during this, this video that we have here. But for now, we're going to start on the home button. That's going to be a lot of your basic stuff. So for instance, you've got all your formatting stuff. So if you want the text to look a certain way, if you want the cell, these are called cells, each of these little boxes. If you want those cells to be a certain color, you can do that. You can change the text size, you can change the color, you can change if it's bold or italicized, all of that sort of stuff is going to be in that first area. And this next area is going to be all about how the text looks in the cell. Is it at the bottom or at the top of the cell? Is it centered in the cell? All of that sort of stuff. The next area is all about formatting. So this is going to be some specific formatting in there that allows you to just default format things with these particular things. So for instance, this one right here that's red, I could do a light red background with dark red text. If I highlighted some cells, I could actually click on that and it would automatically format it. There's a couple functions over here that allow you to kind of navigate and slice and dice what you've got. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Moving down to the bottom here, I want to point out that we've got a couple different tabs down at the bottom. These are called sheets. So they're spreadsheets. So each of them is their own spreadsheet. So if I go and I click on them, so if I click on temp chart, you'll notice the spreadsheet changes because this is actually a completely different spreadsheet. I could click on this plus sign here, and that would allow me to make a completely new sheet. So I'm going to actually do that now. You'll notice it's called sheet 1. I can click and drag it to move it around to position it in here, but just something to know. So you can navigate between different spreadsheets. That way you can have as many as you want in here. And you can even, if I right click, I can rename it and that will allow me to, change the name. I can also copy. If I do move or copy, I can copy that spreadsheet either into this spreadsheet or into another one. Okay. So with this blank spreadsheet, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit because it's kind of small. You'll notice that each of them has kind of a coordinate. So kind of like Battleship, we've got A, B, C, we've got all of our columns, and we've got 1, 2, 3 numbers for our rows. So if I click on a random cell here, up at the top here, you'll notice it says E8. That's the name of the cell. So if you're ever looking for a cell or trying to identify a particular cell, you can look at that E8, and that's because it's in column E, row 8. All right. You can type in these cells as soon as you click on them. So if you click on a cell and you start typing, you can type text, you can type numbers. If you use enter, it's going to bring you down one. If you're typing and you hit your arrow keys, you can move back and forth. So you'll notice it's actually letting me move back and forth here, or up and down. You can also click to the one that you want. If you click and drag, it will let you select a collection of cells. And selecting is important for a little bit later. So I am going to show you this with my already made spreadsheet. So I'm going to switch over here. And we're going to be able to come here and click on. So if I wanted to, I could highlight this entire column, select the whole thing by clicking on the letter A. I can do the same thing with a row by clicking on the number. So number 5, and we've got it all here. So most of this is the same in Google Sheets. I do want to call out that in Google Sheets, those toolbars are kind of hidden underneath these menu items right up at the top. So you do have kind of a main toolbar with all the key formatting stuff that you would need. But you can also, if I were to get out of here and click on format, you'll notice I see the same sort of alignment and text wrapping and formatting there. Data is just like that same data option that we were talking about. And if you type help here, if you're in help here, you can type to search in these menus. So if you're ever not sure where something is, so like if we were to look for that same thing I was talking about, I can start to type in. If I'm typing in text, you notice I get all these options here. So I don't need to find them necessarily as the buttons. But in general, if you hover over a button, it will tell you what it does. Other than that, you'll notice it's really the same. We've got the same sort of column and row setup. So I can still click on this and highlight the whole column. I can click on an individual cell and you'll notice I still see the coordinates here. I have the same sort of tab option down below. My plus sign's in a slightly different place. So there's just little subtle differences between the two, but for the most part, you've got it from there. So now that we've done that, I want to talk a little bit about how to interact with these spreadsheets. So when you're in a spreadsheet, you can, not only can you click to highlight, but when you're highlighting here, you can copy and paste a cell. So like if I wanted to copy this name and put it somewhere else, I can do, for instance, Control C, or if you're a clicker, you can do Edit Copy, but Control C is the shortcut for that. And then if I click on another cell, so maybe I come way out here, I can do Control V or Edit Paste, and that will replicate the cell just like that. There is another way of doing that. By the way, you can do that with a selection too. So if you select the whole row or if you select a few, and I'm just clicking and dragging to do that, Edit Copy or Control C, Edit Paste, Control V. For a group here, you'll want the cell that you select here to be the top one. So if I do Control V again to paste it again, Demetra here is going to be the pasted one. These are all fake names and addresses and email addresses, by the way. Just want to make that clear. I'm not using real people here. All right. One other cool trick is that if you have something, maybe you have a specific number or word, and you want to copy it all the way down. Maybe everyone here is number 1. I can come in here and you'll notice when I hover over the cell, sometimes I get that hand and sometimes I get that cross, and you'll get the cross if you go into the bottom right-hand corner. This is going to allow you to basically spread that all the way down. So you'll notice that when I clicked and dragged, it was able to bring everything down. So I'll just do a little instant replay. So I'm going to do Control Z to undo so I can show you again. So hover exactly where that little box is. So until I get that black cross, click and drag, and there it is. Super easy. All right. To delete these, by the way, I'm just holding down my delete key. So I just touch delete, and that's, you can use delete there. I believe backspace might work a little differently. So this is a good time. If you would like to practice, I encourage you to pause the video now and actually start to create your spreadsheet. You can have a column header like you can see with mine. Mine's an example of a fundraiser RSVP where we have a bunch of information about these particular people. I have another one where I'm tracking different temperatures over a number of dates. Create whatever spreadsheet makes sense for you using what we've learned so far. You can enter in each of those. And don't forget that if you do want to format things, you can click on your slide and then click the appropriate formatting. So in here in Google Sheets, that's going to be this bar right here in the middle, so that you can use the little paint bucket to fill in the slide if you want it to be a different color. Bolding is a really popular option for column headers as well. So take some time to do that, and then you can come back and continue here. And you can work on that spreadsheet. Okay. So hopefully you're all coming back after having a little bit of practice putting together your spreadsheet. So we are going to go through a few things that to make your spreadsheet a little bit more effective. So as you're starting to build your spreadsheet, you might have realized, oh goodness, I completely forgot about this one thing that I wanted to put in there. And now I have all these columns and I don't have anywhere to put it. Or maybe I have a row and I actually wanted it to be in between two other rows. You can insert rows and columns into your spreadsheet, and it will just budge everything over to make room for your new row or column. The way to do this is if you were to click on a row, right click on it. So you're going to use your right click in your mouse. You'll notice that we have this insert option. So I can say insert one column left. What that's saying is I'm going to insert one column on the left of the one that I'm clicking on. This looks almost exactly the same in Excel. So we were in Google Sheets just now. If I right click here, insert. So it's not going to let you have it's not going to tell you exactly where it goes, but it goes right next to the column that you're in. In this case, it's going to go right to the left here. So if I wanted to change that, I could do Control Z, get rid of it, and click over to C and insert there if I wanted it to be on the other side. So I'm going to do Control C to get rid of that, but then you can add things in. You can do the same thing with rows. So if I were to pull in this row and insert right above it, just like that. Okay. So some of the other things, we talked about formatting a little bit. So we touched on the fact that you can make some choices here based on the color. Personally, I really like for my column headers to be a slightly different color just because it makes it easier for my eye to scan them, though that's partially a personal preference. So obviously you can go with whatever makes sense for you. But what you can do is you can pull in. So if I want the whole row to be that color, I can highlight the whole row, come into here and pick a color. And again, I can choose any color I want. They've got tons of options. This is the same in Google Sheets. So you have all that formatting, but I wanted to talk about some of the other kind of special formatting you might need to do. One of those things is text wrapping. So you may have noticed there's an option here for wrap text. The reason I bring this up is because Excel can be a little bit funny. If you're used to using Microsoft Word, you're used to typing and typing and typing, and Word just knows, okay, they're reaching the end of the boundary of the page that I'm on. I'm going to start and continue on the next line and continue on the next line. Excel doesn't do that because Excel is infinite. So it will just keep spreading out for as long as it wants. So if I wanted to, I could come into my spreadsheet here and I could type a whole ton of different information, and you'll notice that it's just going on and on and on. It's all still in the M3 cell. So like if I click away, you'll notice it is all in there. And if I put something in the N cell, it cuts all of that off. Although you'll notice it's still technically in there if we look at the little area right here. So all of that is hidden within here. But what we can do when this happens, when we have, I'm just going to put a bunch of spaces in here because these are fake. But when I have something like that going on, I can use wrap text to kind of push it in. And what it will do is it will just make this cell longer, wider. So in this case, if I click wrap text, it's going to wrap it. And then if I want to, you'll notice as I'm hovering over on the side here. So if you look over on the rows, when I hover over them, I get this little arrow option. If I click and drag that, it's going to adjust the height of that cell. And you'll notice then it's starting to make the text, it kind of looks like a little Word document, a little teeny tiny Word document. So you can do that with these cells here. You can also, if you don't want to try to guess, you can double click and it will automatically size it appropriately. So that's one of the options that you have. You can double click and it will snap to the appropriate size. So you can also do this on the other side. So I can use the rows, I can make the row wider, and you'll notice now it's still wrapping, but it's just a little bit wider. And so if I wanted to, now I have all this blank space. If I double click, that's going to snap it up so that it's all in one spot. There's also times I've been talking about words and I've been using kind of nonsense here, but let's say that we're working with certain types of numbers. So for instance, you might be working with dates, or in this case, like we have money here. There are specific formats for that. And so it will default to them, because if you just type 0 in there, meaning $0, it's not going to look like this one does over here. It's just going to say, okay, you gave me a 0. Awesome, I'm going to put 0 in here. What you can do is you can actually change that format. It's called the data type. So what I can do is if I right click on it and click format cells, you'll notice that there's a bunch of data types. I apologize that this is very small. You'll have to try this for yourself to really see it. Again, that's right click, format cells. But then we have options. We can say currency, and that will allow us to have our 2 decimal places so that we have our currency options. But we also have things like dates. So you can pick the format of the date. So even if you put it in, it will format it the way that you want it to look. So there's lots of options there. That's a really common one. Percentages are common too, but you can choose any of those. With text, text is basically just, I want this to be read as text. I don't want it to be interpreted as a number. So yeah, so this can be really important if you're working with stuff like money or dates, because then you know that it's interpreting it and displaying it exactly how you want it to. One of the other things you'll notice I'm using here is cell color. That we talked a little bit about that with the header row. You can use this to call out certain stuff. Maybe you're calling out specific cells that you want people to look at. So if you're working with more than one person, you can highlight cells a certain color, and that makes it easier for people to recognize. All right. One other tip that I want to talk about is that you can, if you need to, lock a row. What this allows you to do, you'll notice with my spreadsheet here, the first row is our column headers, but I have a lot of information. I've got like 200 people in this particular spreadsheet. And if I scroll down, it's kind of hard to remember exactly what those column headers were. So what you can do is you can lock that first row so that when you're scrolling, it stays. So you can actually, if I pull this in here, I'm just going to copy I'm going to take the whole row, right click, and you should be able to do it from there. I'm just realizing that I might have to do it from a different spot. The way that we can look this up if we're not sure where it is, and it's actually called freeze in Excel, which is part of the problem. So what I can do here is do freeze top row. This allows me to then take that column header. So I'll show you what this looks like. So if I freeze that, and that's what it's called in here, is freezing. Now, if I scroll, that first row stays even while we're scrolling through so that we always have that for context. I'm going to do a Control Z to undo it, but that's one of the things you can do to make it a little easier. All right. To do this in Excel, or to do this in Google Sheets, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, I wonder if it's also called freeze and if I've been calling it the wrong thing. If you highlight this here, we're going to type on help. I'm going to try freeze. Whoops. Yep. So you'll notice it says freeze one row, works the exact same way. All right, so now I encourage you to pause the video and try out some of the features that we've tried here. That way you can practice some of the stuff here. So for instance, just to recap, we went over wrapping text, changing the data type, making some cell color changes, and also trying to freeze that top row to make it easier for you if you've got a lot of data. So take a minute to practice that, and you can come back to the video when you're ready. Okay, so now we are going to go into some other cool stuff that you can do when you have an existing data set. The reason I'm starting with an existing data set here, which is another word for an existing spreadsheet, is because it's a lot more fun to work with something you already have. So this is something where you may need to reach out to the Natick Service Council to get a sample spreadsheet, or maybe you have one from something you've been working on to practice with. So we're going to do a couple different things here. I'm going to show you this within both tools. So you can sort and filter your data to make it easier to do. So for instance, if I'm looking at this entire thing, maybe I'm sending out something and I need everybody in alphabetical order by last name. So I'm looking at this and saying, okay, look, like everyone needs to be by last name. So if that's the case, what I can do is I can come up to this B column here. And again, I'll try to zoom in a little bit. It's not letting me zoom. Hopefully this is big enough for you to see. But if you hover over the B here, so if I'm hovering over B because that's the last name, you'll notice a little arrow shows up here. So it goes away when I'm hovering over something else. So if I hover over C, it will show up under C. But if I want to sort there, I can do that right from B. So if I click on the little arrow, from here, I can sort. You'll notice it sorts the whole sheet. So sort sheet A to Z. And you'll notice it just sorts, it reorganized everyone. And now everyone is sorted last name A to Z. So that's how this is done over here. Google Sheets is a little smarter than Excel here because one of the things that people often find with Excel is that Excel is very literal. It will do exactly what you tell it to. So if you tell it to sort a column A to Z, it'll ignore everything else and say, I want to sort that column. It's gotten a little better as time's gone on. It does flag you, I believe, if you try to do it. So I'll show you what this looks like. So if we come into Excel here and we're going to sort again by last name, I could, so the way to do it, by the way, it's over here. So we have the sort and filter option. Whoops, let me draw that again. Sort and filter option here. And we can say sort and filter, sort A to Z. You'll notice that I get a little warning that says, hey, there's a lot of other stuff in here. Do you just want me to sort this column and mix up all your data? Usually you want it to expand the selection, which is the default. There are some times where, hey, maybe this data has nothing to do with this column. And in that case, you could continue with the current selection. But in this case, you really would want to expand so that it does show everything. So I would click sort, and you'll see now it sorts the exact same way. You can also do a custom sort. If I do sort and filter, custom sort, this allows you to actually, pull in multiple types of sorting. If you click on filter here, this is going to give you that same Google option. And in fact, if you select the whole spreadsheet, which I haven't shown you how to do that, in both places it's the same. You click on this corner piece here, it will let you select the whole spreadsheet. If you do sort and filter, and I'm going to do it twice because of the way I did it, but filter, now they all have those little arrows and it works the exact same way as Google. So you can do the same thing, and you'll notice if I click sort A to Z. So you can do that too. So if you prefer that, just highlight the whole thing, click filter, and then it will feel pretty much just like Google Sheets. Okay. So that's the basics of sorting, and it can make it easier to deal with. There are going to be times where you're going to have to sort by different things. Filtering is also part of this. So again, if you've enabled those filters, this works the same in Google Sheets. You can filter, and you'll notice it's actually letting us filter. So in this case, I have RSVPs that are yes and no. And so what I could do is I could say, I want to only see the yeses. So if I do that, I click on it again and click, I don't want to see the no's, I only want to see the yeses. And blanks is just an option for if there were blank cells. But now I'm only seeing the people that RSVP'd yes. It doesn't get rid of the people that RSVP'd no, but I'm only seeing the people that RSVP'd yes. Okay. So sorting and filtering is a really useful tool. It can help make sense of a lot of stuff that you might be doing. But for now, I'm going to clear my filters. So I'm going to come here and I'm just going to clear the filter. So you'll notice anytime you have a filter in play, it's going to show up like this. So it's got a slightly different icon than when we have, just the regular arrow here. I believe it's the same in Google Sheets, so let's actually just quickly check that to make sure I'm not telling you something that's not true. From here, if I were to filter, you actually do it a little differently. So over here, to do a filter, you would click on this button. It looks like a funnel because that's exactly what's happening. You're just making it smaller. So you take that funnel and you'll notice it allows you to filter, and then you can choose the same filtering. So that's your filter button in Google Sheets. All right. We have one more thing to go over today before I let you go. We're going to talk about how to create graphs and charts. Obviously, it's really important before you start creating a graph or a chart, you really need to think about what you want to represent here. So for instance, maybe I want a pie chart of all of the t-shirt sizes. So I want to know who has what t-shirt size, and I want to get a general idea of the distribution of these different t-shirt sizes. Or maybe I want the same thing, but I want it as RSVPs. I want a bar chart with all of the RSVPs. For our temperature chart here, maybe I want to track the temperature. And so I want to track one line for the high temperature across the month and one line for the low temperature across the month. So really think about that, because part of the reason why I'm telling you to do that is because you have to tell it what to use to make this chart. Excel does most of the work for you, and so does Google Sheets, but you have to give it the right information. So in this case, we have the date, we have the high and the low. If I were to take this and highlight all this information that we have, I could then create a chart. And so the way to do that is you're going to go Insert, Chart, just like that. Super straightforward. What it's going to do is it's going to try to figure it out for you. In this case, so in Google Sheets, it's going to guess what you want. And in this case, this is pretty much exactly what I want. I have my high and my low. I probably would have gone for red for high and blue for low, but that was just that was what Google Sheets chose. But you'll notice that over on the side here, we have all the information. So for instance, I could say if I wanted this to be something other than a line chart, which in this case doesn't make sense, I could change it. I could also, make adjustments. But in this case, because it was such a simple one and I had all the information we need, we probably don't need to do that much. We could customize. So over here, I can change different things. So you can say I have the different styles here. You can make a smooth line. So if it's really angular, you could make it kind of smoother. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with that. Over in Excel, because I'm going to show you in Excel too, it works the same way. So if I do the same thing where I highlight the whole thing, which you can click and drag, or you can do exactly what I did. Insert, and then your charts are over here. So you can see here, it lets you pick kind of ahead of time. So in this case, I could, if I want to, go to recommended charts. And right now it doesn't really know, but if I go to all charts, I can then say, I want this to be a line chart, and it will pull it in. And so it looks like it might have, see, it ran into some issues here. So let's try instead, I'm gonna get rid of that chart because I don't think it really worked. And what I'm gonna do is hover over, I'm gonna select just the stuff that we need because I think it got confused. Insert. If I go to recommended charts, you'll notice it's almost exactly the same. So I can pull that in. And when I click OK, you've got your chart. You can actually double click in and change the title and stuff, but it's all just right here. Super simple. Now, to use a more complicated chart now, you can do this. So like in cases where you might have a choice, and I'll pop back over to Google Sheets for this so that you can see what it might look like to use that toggle option, because if you're doing this in Excel, you would just toggle, either go through the recommended charts or specifically say, I want a pie chart, I want a bar chart, I want a specific type of chart here. But if we are going to be in Google Sheets, I'm going to go back to our fundraiser RSVPs, and I'm going to use, again, that t-shirt size one that we were talking about. So I'm just going to use the t-shirt sizes here, insert chart. And you'll notice that it kind of figured it out. It wanted a pie chart here, and it made the pie chart based on the distribution of the sizes. If for some reason I wanted that to be something else, I can change this to a bar chart, for instance. So for instance, it could look like this. And you'll notice this one's a little weird because it's choosing where they're supposed to be. So you might have to shuffle that around, but you can choose to kind of make some changes there. But it makes your charts super easy. All right. So now this is a really good time to actually practice these things. So just to recap, the things that you should be practicing now are going to be that custom filtering, as well as auto creating graphs and charts. And that's going to be the last thing that we cover for today. We will have an advanced session recording as well, which will cover some other topics, things like formulas, which you'd use in Excel, conditional formatting, also things like VLOOKUP, which is very important if you're comparing different spreadsheets. We're also going to talk about pivot tables, which is a really popular thing and also kind of an intimidating thing, but I promise they're really not that bad once you start practicing them. I highly encourage you to practice in general with this. The more that you practice what you're looking at here, the better you'll be. In general, Excel is a very Googleable topic. So if there's something you're looking to do and you forget how to do it and you've misplaced this video, you can always Google it and you'll probably find someone who's explained it before. That's kind of the great thing about using a tool that so many other people use. So don't feel shy about that. I'll be honest, I use Excel quite a bit and I still Google things that I forget how to do or want a refresher on. Sometimes you'll find people do a video, sometimes people write out a little page with the information. So I highly recommend that if you need a refresher and you can't find this video, definitely don't be shy about doing that search. Google doesn't judge. So anyway, with that, I think we are all set here. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and I hope you feel a little bit more comfortable doing some of these fun things in Excel. Hope to see you in the advanced session as well. So thank you so much for all of you.